and it's lovely to be here again. So I am based in sunny South Africa, although sun's gone down now, and in Johannesburg. And just a little bit more about who I am, besides the Chief Office Fairy. I've worked in the corporate world for very many years. And during that time, I had my own personal development journey. So I became a people strategist, a learning and development practitioner, as well as a change manager. And then while during that, I studied emotional freedom therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, as well as I ended up doing my yoga teacher's training. So in my journey, I found out that there's kind of a gap when you look at the corporate world and how we do human resources. I'm really passionate about people being happy at work, because I'm sure you all agree with me that when you're happy, you're a lot more productive. And I also believe that the world has changed to a point of we don't really need the stick anymore. We don't need somebody whacking us over the knuckles to say we've got to, do our jobs properly and check in on us. And we have now the advent of autonomous teams that's coming into the workplace. We also have, these words of happy human experiences, well-being at work. And my personal methodology is to find your flow. So in finding your flow, finding ease within your work, and my personal value is finding peace and balance within ourselves. And when we find peace and balance within ourselves, we actually radiate that to the rest of our community, the rest of the people that we engage with, and it sort of echoes into our environments. And when we do that, we sort of change the world. Now, having said that, because all of those things are really positive, I find that in the workplace, we have a lot of, these words that come up right now, which is bullying in the workplace, psychological safety. Those are issues that people are experiencing. We get a lot of anxiety. People experience fear in different formats, whether it is within their own environments that they are living in, disharmony with self, with others, and with what they do. In a country like South Africa, what we find is that unemployment is close to 40%. And that isn't even the real numbers, depending on how you look at things, which means that 60% of the population has to make sure that we kind of serve 100%. And that means that it's a systemic problem, because people are stuck in jobs that they don't really want to do, but they feel they have to do. When you have that in the workplace, you have unhappy workers, and then you have people that are sort of disconnected. So I'd like to share my screen with you, and please let me know when you can see it. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the HappyFactory logo. And HappyFactory started, or the name HappyFactory actually came into being one day when I was had one foot in the corporate world and one foot out. And I was busy testing these theories of people strategy and doing people strategy better. Because what I found was you had operations, people that were in the thick of things, that were trying to get people to do stuff, but they weren't really doing it in a happy way, in a constructive way. They weren't really motivating people in the best way possible that I could see. And then we had human resources, and human resources kind of made sure that, they crossed all ticked all the boxes, that there was lots of legislation that's followed. And there's a kind of gap that was missing when it comes to people, culture, and looking at it from a human perspective. And so I was busy testing this out. And one day I was driving to work and really had a blank mind. Probably my right brain was active, my creative brain was on, and HappyFactory sort of just popped in. And I was like, oh, okay. And I went into the office and I checked online and I was like, okay, great, that one's available. So that's HappyFactory. And then I had to really do some soul searching and figure out, okay, what's important to me? What symbolizes HappyFactory? So the sunflower for me is something that is global. It's understood by everybody that really feels happy. And the colors and the color scheme also is part of that embracing and cultivating happiness. The cogs also symbolize happiness in the workplace. So the byline for my business is mind, body, energy, and work. And that sort of transpired over the course of the 4-year period where I developed different kinds of programs. Now, if we have to think about the human, right? Every human has something that they're passionate about, right? Something that gets their blood flowing, things that they connect with deeply. And the human then has an idea. And that idea is connected with something that they have a purpose for, something that they found meaning with. And then they start doing this thing. So I really think I want to change the world or make the world better with maybe creating a new training provision or creating some kind of sustainability in the environment. Then they start doing the work and then they radiate this. So they send out all these vibes of me doing this thing that I love doing. Then they connect with other humans or they find people that they can also, that also has the same sort of passion. They vibe on the same level. And then they all start doing this or getting this idea going. That's how we build communities or build teams, build companies. There's one central vision, one central purpose of we need to do this in the world, and everybody else sort of collaborates on the same idea and the same goal. Now, what happens when somebody doesn't have heart or purpose in that? So you can see there's one person here who doesn't have their heart anymore. The other person is just not connected to the goal anymore. What do you think happens then? And if you think about your own experiences and your own maybe experiences in the workplace or in teams, when somebody's disconnected, somebody can't connect with the idea anymore, or somebody just doesn't have that passion for the same thing, or they've changed along the way, you really find that the team or productivity reduces. You find that somebody else has to pick up the slack because those two people are not there anymore. And that's what we experience when we have unhappy people, people that are not connected, people that don't align their values with whatever that goal was. And eventually you'll see that this little idea is now grayed out because it can't survive. And that's how you have companies that don't evolve anymore. So the basic premise or the principles that I would work on is looking at what are the basic needs of a human being. And when you think about it, most humans want to feel love. They want to make meaning from their lives. And they want to feel or be healthy and whole. Now, this is something that we all look for in whatever it is that we do. We may get it in different ways. We may search for it in different ways. And we try to find that in how we live our lives. When we don't have it, we then, become disconnected, or we don't resonate with what it is that we're doing anymore. And so what I like to look at is the different forms of capital that we have in the environment. And there's a lady called Dana Zohar who writes a little bit about spiritual capital. And so what she explains is, in her theory, is that in society, we have material capital. Now, material capital is all the things that we know about. things that work in society. It is money. When we think about social capital is our trust in society. Social capital is our commitment to the health and well-being of everybody around us. And there's a really interesting article or paper written by Francis Fukuyama, who talks a little bit about social capital and how you can measure it. And he looks at measuring social capital by the amount of crime you have, by the amount of divorce you may have in a society, by the amount of litigation, because, you know, we sue each other when we don't trust each other, and we can't engage with each other to resolve problems. So it's generally a feeling of empathy and the amount of empathy that we have in society. And then there's the part which Dana Zohar brings up, which is spiritual capital. Now, spiritual capital is not necessarily, it's not religion. It is meanings that we have, the meanings that we make out of the world, our values, our purpose in life. And the way that we think about that is, or we'd measure that, is by how much we think outside the box, by how much of humility we have as a society or as a group. And when we think about how much of access to energy that we have, what kind of energy are we sending out? What kind of energy are we doing our work with? Now, when you think about spiritual capital and these moments of these aha moments that people have in society, you have a lot of times that people that go through you know, these really challenging situations come out with some kind of meaning that they've gotten from it. They have some kind of peak experience. When they've done a few studies, they found that even though people don't talk about it, 70% of the people that they surveyed, and those are all adults, have, regardless of culture, regardless of education or background, all have had a peak spiritual experience in their life in some way, shape, or form. And those are things that actually get us understanding what makes us human. It brings out that inner purpose within us, that inner soul. And when you think about the material capital, social capital, and spiritual capital we have in life, the material capital is generally our IQ, what I think. Our social capital, the way we engage with each other, tells us a little bit about how our empathy levels and our EQ, our emotional quotient, it's what I feel in the world. And then our spiritual capital tells us about what I am or who I am. And that relates to us making meaning out of life, finding purposeful experiences, and all of them together helps us become happy, healthy, and whole. Now, these are the basic tenets that I look at when I'm building out a people strategy for companies, or when I'm thinking about how best a company should work. And I've got some theories about that. And I call it the evolved organization. What is the evolved organization? And creating these is part of my revolution, you could say. And so these are the basics of how I would go about creating a people strategy. The first principle is heart-centered leadership, making sure that leaders help people connect, that they're empathetic, that they lead from the heart. And what does leading from the heart actually mean? It means that we think about humans first. We speak with loving kindness, and we can even give negative feedback to somebody. But when we speak it with humility, with care, we are providing the right kind of information for somebody to engage with us. We communicate on the right vibration. The second part is culture and environment. And that is the way in which we work, the unwritten ground rules, the environment that creates the safe spaces that we create for people. And then we have polyphonic teams. And I really love this. So I came upon this a while back, and it made me think of polyphonic ringtones. If anyone's ever remembered when Nokia's first came out, this was like way back when. And we had these really big Nokia phones. And then we had these ringtones that suddenly could have or play music or play out the songs that we like, popular songs. And polyphony in music really means the simultaneous combination of two or more tones that sort of play together that creates a melody. And when we think about polyphonic teams, we may have different teams in the workplace. But if you think about, let's say, a department that is in marketing, and then you have a department that's doing finance, the values of the people that work in those departments are kind of different, or their top values are kind of different. People that work in a financial department may really think that integrity is really important because we have a right and wrong, black and white. But a marketing team, people that are in sales, are kind of like, embellishing things. They are, making things bigger or smaller. They are, really dramatic in how they engage with each other. So the value systems are slightly different. But together, if they all understand what the purpose is, and if they're able to collaborate within the constructs of heart-centered leadership, within the right kind of culture and behaviors that we build out in an organization, then you have teams that can work together really well. And then we have human-centered design. Now, most often I find that human or design in the workplace is generally focused on how can we get the most money out of things? How can we get the most out of resources? But when you look at designing for humans, by humans, you actually make sure that whatever product or service you design can be delivered in the best possible way by the people that are delivering the service or the product, that they're not having to bend over backwards in order to make sure that this is delivered, that they are happy doing so, and that customers are also happy, and that it is designed for the human experience, to enhance the human experience. Number 5 is imagination and ideation. And I find a lot of the times we don't really focus on creativity in the workplace. And so when we bring in imagination, creativity, it actually improves our intuition. And I'll take you through what some of the future skills are, and what we're looking at in the future human in a bit. Number 6 is connection to the natural world. Now, connection to the natural world is really understanding our impact to the environment. Right now, ESG is all the craze, and I'm really excited about it because it talks to us making sure that whatever we do in whatever product or service we build, we understand the impact that we have to the environment. And when we bring this as part of how we create an organization, then we're actually doing this responsibly. And then we have accountability and evolution. And those two words kind of don't go together. But when you think about how we evolve, and naturally, when we talk about agility in teams now, there's, agile teams is all the rage in the corporate world. And when you think about how people are evolving and doing things incrementally, we have to make sure that we're accountable to the people within the organization, that we remain accountable to our customers, our stakeholders, and the environment. And so that accountability almost encompasses the entire picture that we have. And so those are the basic premises that I would use, or principles that I would use. And all of it focuses around the purpose. And the purpose must be heartfelt within any organization. Each individual that works in the organization must be able to connect to that purpose. And so I'll come back to what each of these things mean. But what I want to take you through is, what does the future human look like? And so there's many studies that has been done, but these are the top skills that I focus on in the work that I do. And each of these are specific courses within HappyFactory. So one of the skills is leadership, resilience, and self-management. And I find that as you have people that are coming into the workforce, the newbies in the workforce, we have a lot of issues when it comes to managing emotions, self-regulation, and resilience, I think, is really important with how we take on challenges in the workplace, with how we fail forward. And also, when it comes to leadership, it's particularly leading from the heart. So understanding all our emotions, leading in an empathetic way. And then we have authenticity and EQ. So authenticity is really not, people ask me, what does authenticity mean? Does it mean that I should cry in front of my employees or in front of my peers? No, it means that you need to be who you are. You need to embrace who you are. And I always give an example of saying, sometimes I am not the office fairy. Sometimes I've got to be Khaleesi, mother of dragons, when I'm managing a project and making sure that everybody's doing what they need to do and holding people accountable, being direct with people. And then there's sometimes that I'm like Wonder Woman because I feel like I'm just doing it all. I've got a lasso of truth and I've got, what is the other, and I'm being strong when it comes to managing things. So, and as I grow, I find I've got different personalities. And just an aside, one of my friends said, she feels like I'm turning into Fran Fine from The Nanny. And I don't know what that means. I've tried to make my hair flatter. And then we have discernment and problem solving. So most people now in the workplace are using AI to such a degree that we're losing our critical thinking skills. And I think, when you look at just social media as a whole, how do you know what you're watching is the truth? How do you know whether something is real or not? I think this is going to be really, really important as we go on. What is illusion? What is reality? And I think in order for us to get there, we've got to build things like our intuition, our ability to have judgment. And most people think judgment is actually a bad thing. But when you use judgment in a positive way, it actually turns into discernment. And that helps us make informed decisions in the workplace. The next one is continuous self-learning. So when we think about continuous self-learning, it's about creating a kind of culture within ourselves, a curiosity, a sense of curiosity about saying, well, what does this mean? Let me go and look it up. Let me go and research it myself. You don't have to wait for somebody to say, okay, this is the training that we're going to be having in the workplace, and this is the day that you're going to go and train. Right now, we live in a society of continuous knowledge, and information is available at the tips of our fingers. So how do we proactively engage with that information in order to acquire new skills? Most often it's easier saying, well, I want to learn how to cook a new recipe. And then I go on YouTube a recipe. And now I'm skilled at doing this. That's continuous self-learning. But how am I actually using that within my life? And how am I using all those skills that I'm learning in order to better myself and better the people around me? The last one is creativity and intuition. And I think this is going to be extremely important. When I think of imagination, when I think of, I mentioned problem solving, being able to create new ideas. And I'm going to ask everybody, when we think of the future and how many jobs are going to be made redundant or no longer exist, what do you think is going to happen then to your role? And what happens then to all those humans that we have that now become displaced? I think this skill is going to be paramount to how we see ourselves in the future and how we engage with ourselves in the future. So for me, creativity means we reinvent ourselves, we reinvent how we operate within society, we reinvent what's important to us as well, because as society changes, those things sort of fall away. And, a perfect utopian society will mean that we don't really have to worry about survival anymore. And if we don't have to worry about survival, what's going to keep us interested? Most often you find when people have everything, all of their needs met, their basic human needs met, still have problems, right? And why do we still have problems? Do we create these problems for ourselves? Is that the creative brain working? Maybe we should be using those creativity skills for something else and helping us thrive in society. So these are the top 5 skills of the future human. And again, depending on how exponential technology is, and depending on all these, on the way that the world moves, this may also change. But right now, as it stands, and the research that exists, these are the top 5 skills. So this is something that HappyFactory does in the workplace, and we either do training on each one of these as individual subjects, or we incorporate that into leadership and other programs that we have. Okay, so there's something else that I want to show you. Now, we spoke about the evolved organization, and every organization needs to start somewhere. And I really like this approach to designing teams. So this is available. It's free on my website. It's a downloadable resource, so you can just go and download it, and anyone's able to use this. Essentially, when you are building out a team, we have to put down what the purpose of the team is, the reason to exist. And that's the core value or the core purpose of any organization. The value proposition is how you actually deliver that to an organization. A team success would be, how do you know when you look back on the year, how do you know that your team is actually successful? And that could be a success statement that you create. And this ends up being a vision board for the team. When you look at goals and metrics, those are things that are actually measurable, and we look at SMART goals that we put in for the entire organization. We also look at the capabilities. So if we need to deliver this value proposition, what are the specific capabilities that we need? And when we think of capabilities, there may be specific departments or specific high-level actions that you would not need to have in the team. And from there, you can actually build out the key activities. And when you put in the key activities, you can then figure out who's doing what. When organizations are either upscaling or downscaling, or even new organizations being created, mergers and acquisitions, I always ask people the question, what can be outsourced? What can you contract out? Because the world is changing in that way as well. You don't necessarily have to have permanently employed employees. You could have lots of things that are actually outsourced, and then there's certain things that you may want to keep insourced. When you're building out autonomous teams, these become paramount to what needs to happen. How do we know that it's happening? What are the goals and metrics that we use? And then we have behaviors and values. And this is very close to my heart, because this is now, how do we actually operate? Now, every company has values, the values that they would base their entire organization on, the way in which everybody needs to operate. And there's key values that people have. What I find most often is that because we are a multicultural world and multicultural companies, a lot of people interpret a value differently. And that's where behaviors come in. So as an example, I did a values activity with a company, and one of the values was respecting each other. And so then I asked the question, well, how do you know somebody's respecting you? What does it mean for you? And one of the participants said, well, I need someone to look me in the eyes when they're speaking to me. I need them to greet me every morning. And another participant said, well, that's actually not part of my culture. Looking somebody directly in the eyes means that I'm being aggressive. And so just one item, respecting each other, one value, is now experienced differently by two people working in the same company. So behaviors then become really important in how we articulate those values. Everybody also understands how we need to behave when nobody's looking. And these are things that we build out in people strategies. So when we're looking at embedding values, a program that we could use would be, how do we get people to behave this way when no one's looking? How do we create sustainability in the workplace? Maybe there's a feedback mechanism. Maybe there's a mood board or a way in which we engage in teams in our daily meeting. Maybe each one of these behaviors or values needs to be discussed every day, or we need to create a culture of calling it out when somebody's not doing it. And that is depending on, the climate of the organization, the types of people that you have, the different levels of people that you have working in an organization, and the teams. And this particular team canvas can be rolled up. It can be done at organization level and be rolled down to specific, micro teams that you have. And it's proven to be really successful. So this is available for anybody to use. So that is a little bit about people strategy. Now, I explained organizational design and the different types of people programs. Now, people programs could be dealing with a specific problem in the workplace, either restructuring an organization, creating culture within an organization, or evolving them or revolving an organization. And so what HappyFactory does is we go in and we design this for a company and help them roll it out. How do we help them roll it out? That's where change management comes in. So when we need to change something, we need to make sure we communicate with people, that we engage people, and we affect the right kind of learning methodologies and tools in order to help people adapt to the new way of doing things. And then we have employee engagement. So different kinds of team sessions, as I've mentioned, values-based group dynamics. We look at different types of personalities in a room. And then we also look at how you can build spiritual capital within an organization. How do we understand the energy of care within the team? And how do we actually help this play out within the organization? Most companies don't even think about what does care actually mean. And a lot of people think that, if we just give out rewards to people, it means that we care about them. But truly engaging with somebody, being authentic in leadership, leading from the heart, those are things that help build spiritual capital. How we engage with each other when no one's looking. And then we have leadership training, masterclasses, and workshops. Those are some of the things that I've mentioned to you in terms of future skills, but we also develop workplace readiness programs, graduate programs, and leadership programs as well. And then one of my personal favorites is well-being programs. And depending on the organization, depending on the company, HappyFactory will design a well-being program, whether it is creating workspaces that engage people. As an example, one of the projects that we worked on recently was creating environments where people could collaborate better. So with the end of COVID, we have people that are now moving back into the workplace, and nobody wants to go back from being comfy in remote teams to back into the office. So we created little pods for people to have silent time, meditation rooms or mindfulness spaces for people to have either focus work or just be with themselves. We created a Zen garden in the middle of the floor so that people could actually spend time there. We also looked at biophilic designs, so that incorporated a lot of nature into the workplace. And we also incorporated smells. So using aromatherapy oils in the workplace to help reduce anxiety and stress. And so that was, a particular piece of work. That company was pretty open to exploring those types of methodologies that we used. And it's going pretty well. So people are excited to be back in the office. People were really happy that they had downtime, that they weren't at it 24/7, and they actually preferred being in the office rather than being at home, where they found they were working a lot more and not having time to go on a break. Or people that lived in apartment buildings that didn't have gardens now could engage with the environment when they were back in the workplace. So just some easy tips. I will share the presentation with you guys with a few other tips and a little bit more details in it. And you're most welcome to use all of the material that's in there.